All right, I think we're live. I want to welcome you to Maxio, our AI in the C-suite, how Maxio leaders are making faster decisions with Maxio and MCP. I'm going to start with our agenda, introduce myself, what we've covered so far in the series, and then a brief overview of Maxio MCP, followed by some Q&A. So I'm Dan Owens. I'm the CFO at Maxio. Got 20 years of experience, 3.5, a little more than 3.5 here with Maxio. I've got experience with startups through billion-dollar companies, everything in between. The last half of my career has been in private equity. I'm also a Maxio customer, so it's an interesting first time I've worked in the finance function and actually been a customer using the same product. Definitely an interesting environment serving the office of the CFO. So our R&D team, it's a love-hate relationship since I get to tell them exactly what I and our customers want to see in the product. Like you, I'm enjoying the first inning of AI in the business and finance and the transformation it's bringing. So what have we covered so far in the series? So if you've been following, Brandon, our CEO, gave a great real-time overview of how he's using Maxio MCP and identifying the emerging risks and opportunities across the business and the SaaS space in general. Chris Weber, our Chief Product Officer, is really leading the charge here on what Maxio, he started as a customer and then actually came to join Maxio and has been seeing the product grow from beginning to end. So it's fantastic seeing how he's leveraging AI into the application and how the users are interacting with it. But he uses this to guide the product roadmap and solicit what customers are actually looking to see in the product and how he builds the product roadmap from there. Monica, our head of sales and aftermarket team, did a great recap of how she's using it to get real-time health dashboards of the pipeline, how she helps support her sales team, actually work opportunities, demonstrate the product to prospects, and then work with customers after the sale to make sure they're getting value, as well as offering additional type feature functionality. So let me see, we got MCP. So no, it's a new acronym out there, and Maxio is using this technology to allow AI and the platform to work together. So it's a really cool technology that allows you to harness the power of AI and Maxio together. It allows you to use natural language prompts to explore your billing and revenue data, and ultimately empowers you to take action to make informed decisions more confidently. So let's see our next slide. This part of the session is really getting into the CFO's edge in MCP and exploring how CFOs and finance teams will love the MCP connector to make it easy to explore the data within Maxio and to derive meaningful insights using common language prompts. So I think Will is going to launch, who's on the session as a Maxio team member here, to ask us a couple poll questions. So we got, how often do you use Maxio or MCP in your workflow? So we've got one response. Never, just starting. All right, so now they're trickling in. All right, so that's a good mix. Half so far, never, just starting. And then we've got a handful of power users, it's 5 or 10 or so are using daily, weekly, which is cool. All right, so let's go. So, all right, so what I want to do is get into, I'll just show you a quick demo of Maxio MCP and how I'm using it or attempting to use it. Again, I'm a user like you and early to the party. I'm trying to figure out how to leverage it as well. What I'm showing you is in a demo company here is a dashboard I created in using our demo environment. And it's really, the foundation of this is the Maxio Submo report. and the underlying data within Maxio. And what's cool about this is I ran the data dashboard is built on a January to February type cycle. And it's showing you ending ARR, customer count, and then you get all this like great information with it over a time series. And you can see ARR trends, the bridge, your monthly movement, expansion, contraction, new, lost logos. So there's a ton of data that's just pulling right there. And then if you go to like, we're seeing a spike here in February, like drop into new, I can see like the details of which customers are driving that. And then you click in and you can actually see the transaction number within Maxio, the item numbers, the contract start and end date, and quantity ARR. So it's like really like what the beauty of Maxio and the MCP, it allows you to harness like this data, but build a dashboard customized to what you and your function are doing from a day-to-day basis. And I built this in like under 30 minutes with all this detail. There was a lot of like back and forth of how do I want it configured and what information am I looking, and then drill down capabilities. But what I think it unlocks is the harness of the underlying data, but how are you as an end user interacting with the application in your business, and what questions you get asked on a daily basis, and the rest of your company to harness this data as well. But it's curated specifically to what is more and most meaningful to you to accomplish your function and help grow your business. That's what I love about that's what I love about like the technology and how fast it's moving. Is before this would be several reports and maybe clicking through a bunch right now, but then the ability to dive right in here and say, all right, now this is the function. And usually this is the dashboard I'm operating on. It gives me a pulse day to day of what's going on in the business. And I'm able to ask or answer questions from my board or the CEO or just head of sales on what I'm seeing and have we processed orders or whatnot. But they're also able to see this real time as well. So you're getting really to this almost virtual close type cycle within your revenue billing, where prior to that, you'd have to wait month end before you're distributing this information. Now it's almost daily, which is like good and bad. When people are seeing the information before you, it puts you on the hot seat. So let me go back. Next phase. Okay. So what I wanted to share in this next piece is like a close cycle and how Maxio, MCP, and your AI of choice can interact with the close cycle. So this next series of snippets is broken out between like how the close from an FP&A CFO like perspective, or after your billing revenue recognition process gets started, how can you interact in the close process? So let me kick this off.
Okay, in this video, I'd like to build on what Brandon, Chris, and Monica were sharing previously in how Maxio and Maxio with MCP can really like enhance your tech stack and basically become a virtual assistant for you as you're managing the business. So what I've got on the screen is an export CSV format for the Submo and Maxio. Usually this is the first thing I run as part of the month end once my team has told me all their pencils down, or at least draft pencils down, and processing the activity with our go-to-market team. I've also, for this example, added in a balance sheet from a demo account and then a trend P&L from a demo account. So try to demonstrate how this can all come together. Using Claude, I asked it to build me a metrics recap using the Submo and the P&L. And it basically took that raw CSV file and gave me a beginning ARR through ending ARR. It calculated the gross and net retention. When you drill into the actual formula, you can see the formula that it's using, which is nice. So it's not just like a hard-coded number. And then it's giving a recap of the P&L and then some unit economics. I am a big fan of the picture's worth 1,000 words. So I also asked Claude to graph some of this presentation so it's easier on the eyes to see what's going on with the data. And it did a nice job of saying from January 25 to March 26, you can see a nice steady growth pattern in ending ARR and some choppiness in the net new ARR. It did a CAC payback with CAC dollars and paybacks in month. I asked it to give me a benchmark line as well to see what industry standard would be for a company of this size. And based on this analysis, it would say that this demo company is actually doing better than the benchmark. Its CAC dollars are less, and the payback in months are lower than the benchmark standard, which is good. Also showed based on the submo data, customer growth and net adds. So there is some lumpiness reflecting some churn, and which gets you to a negative net adds in some months. Going over to the right, it did an LTV to CAC and magic number. So in this instance, it was a little below, significantly below in the earlier months. And then you see a progression of where it's getting above or meeting benchmark standards and then getting above that magic number. Anything above 1 is great. 125 is really great. The LTV to CAC here seems to be dipping down to 3.44. So it is having some downward pressure there. You'd like to see that number, at least 3 and above is good. Looking at this T3M, the annualized retention for GRR and NRR. So that looks like the graph the scale wasn't adequate to capture the true range. So we can see if I go here into Claude and say, maybe it's 70 to, let's say 140 as a appropriate scale. So let's update the lower and upper bounds. If I kick that off, we'll see if that fits better in the graph scheme. So this just demonstrates that you could do that in the graph in the Excel setting, or you can ask Claude to do some of the lifting. So this actually gives you a better picture of where the upper and lower bounds are. NR is that's beautiful. It's above 130 here when you look at the first quarter of 26 in this case. And then, but there's still an issue with the ERR being in this low 80s to dipping below 80, which isn't great. So it looks like they've got great expansion, but potentially some retention type issues. So the power, when you take MCP and Maxio, it's really what's the core data below it is what is the magic. And then having a tool like AI that can help you get through that data quicker to get to a decision point can make the close, and really shifting from the 80-20 of instead of 80% of your time doing data prep, you get to spend 80% of your time now on the analysis. So here, if I ask it, Claude, to give us key observations and recommendations, what the management team should be aware of and where we should focus our efforts over the next 6 to 12 months, I'm going to ask it to format it in a tab so it's board ready. Let's see what it recommends. It's reading the table range, and it's going to look at the data. I love that you can see its actual thought processes going through. And here I have it set to prompt me if it's making any decisions that potentially can go a path that you want to have that human in the loop. And so it wants to recreate a tab, so we'll allow it. Starting, so I'm going to just pause it here for a sec. Okay, so that took about 3 or 4 minutes for it to crank through all the data. But it's interesting, the tab that it created for observations and recommendations starts with an executive summary saying the business is growing at 10%, 214 million to 235. NRR is 108 to 116. So strong upsell motion, but it's saying gross retention stuck in the high 70s and CAC payback is stretching now to 19 months. Priority is to convert expansion momentum into durable unit economics by fixing gross churn and tightening sales and marketing efficiency, not by accelerating spend. And then it gives a recap of a KPI scoreboard with some at-risk type functions. That shows you the 79 that we saw in the graph, and then the CAC payback is at risk below standard. It generated a whole bunch of key observations, positive and negative. So new logo velocity is slowing. And then for recommendations on the next 6 to 12 months, you're seeing creating a gross retention task force in the next 3 months. Defending gross margin that was in the 80s, so that is in good shape, so let's maintain that. And all in all, I think this is a good example of it can do a lot of the groundwork. Now, one thing I have learned, which I'm sure you have if you've played at all with AI, is trust but verify. I think a lot of this gives you a good framework, but the devil's in the details. I love that in Excel, you can ask it to give you the formulas and you can make sure it's auditable. And so that is a great starting place as opposed to just value only type fields. This, I guess, from where I think a lot of finance people find comfort is in the Excel type ecosystem. And then so taking what Maxio and your GL and now Claude embedded in Excel as an add-in really is like another analyst on your team, which is really great. Okay, in this.
All right, so I got Submo review. In the next, I got two more segments. So you get your close done and you've got your basic handle on the operation and what good, bad, and ugly is. So now you need to draft the MD&A. So the nice thing is you got an extension of, you've got your Submo, you've got your financials, whether it's your GL and your CRM sales data, and you can just leverage this to keep going to help draft an MD&A.
Okay, so just next in the sequence, once you've done your Submo review, your P&L balance sheet, the next stage really is now how do you craft your MD&A? And then how do you use that data really to paint a picture of what needs to be done, like what happened, but more importantly, what needs to happen in the future. So Claude, I asked Claude to go ahead and review the detail and with the Submo and the P&L, and it's crazy what it comes up with. So basically it gives you a whole outline of an MD&A that you can then craft or edit to tweak based on how you want the message to resonate. So I also asked it to include third party or external type benchmarks. In this case, it's looking up these SaaS benchmarks to compare like the current period to prior period and prior year. And it's going down the whole ARR, profitability, unit economics, and giving a quarterly performance with commentary, and then drives into a whole discussion of results by area. And then based on the benchmark analysis request, it's looking at KeyBank Capital Markets, SaaS Capital, which is fantastic for 100 million to 500 million ARR type business. And so our demo company here is showing low, median type growth on ARR, great gross margins and profitability, low on net revenue retention, as you can see. And then it goes into a whole action plan that you can include or not include, but it like gives you an idea of what it's seeing in the data. And then product like mix recommendations and how you should be looking at the business or evaluating type results. Just another in the sequence that helps move from your time from being a data prep to actually getting to do data analytics and helping craft one, the understanding of the business, how the action plan, and what do you do with the data once you have it? And typically in that whole MD&A, what's really missing is the so what. And the so if you have the core data, allows you to make informed decisions with informed recommendations, which is a huge value add for any business. Okay.
All right. So now let's see slideshow. All right, the last part is in the sequences would be asking, or typically in this, you do your close and then you DNA, you do your financial reporting. But within that, you're also keeping the lens on forward looking and what's the next 12, 18, even 3-year type forecast. The key part of that is if you're starting in reality with the data in Maxio, it makes it really easy to have the concrete baseline to formulate a multi-year type forecast and then drill back to how those assumptions were derived. Here in this segment, I'll just show you how you can leverage Maxio to come up with a multi-year forecast.
So I want to just finish up this series of this demo type thought process and saying, hey, we got the Submo closed, you did your financial review, MD&A, and then you're like, what's the next progression in the series? So if you look at a month-end, quarter-end type close exercise. And that really gets into a multi-year type forecast, or at least a rolling forecast, which I'm a big fan of. So I asked Claude, I said, now you've got the MD&A, you got the submo detail, come up with a framework for forecast assumptions and build out a 3-year model that we can then maintain. So it basically went down, gave us some growth variables, assumptions, and also OpEx, balance sheet type metrics, and debt, what do you do with cash, and all that good stuff. And then it built out a quarterly through fiscal 28 forecast and annual. So you got a full income statement, balance sheet, and then I said, give us a cash flow as well, which is great. So if you're steering the ship, you want to be looking at longer term strategic initiatives while keeping an eye on what are you doing tactically. Again, it's being grounded in what's your source of truth and what's your existing book of business and contracts in force and what are they delivering that allows you to build something like this and have high confidence that you're actually steering the ship in the right direction. So the cool thing with this in Claude is you do that what if scenario. So if we said, what would be the impact of the business in 27 and 28 if there was a 10% improvement in subscription ARR retention? Let's see what it comes back with. So we can calculate all this. So this exercise probably took 3 or 4 minutes for the actual agent to run. So they're doing the math, but it's creating a side-by-side scenario where you had your base case, scenario 1, SN sales marketing scales, and scenario 2, where you're holding it flat. But holding the key takeaway is holding the sales marketing dollars flat roughly doubles the bottom line impact on the retention improvement. So pretty crazy stuff that allow you to model and do the what if scenario, which as you're looking at, does it have people here, what are we going to do to improve retention, or what does it matter? You can see it has a material impact on the business. And I think this helps communicate across your entire company. So everyone understands the what may seem like a small impact, the individual actually multiplies. And as you get that magnification, you're looking at material positive impact to a business by understanding the metrics and what levers drive like profitability and success for your organization. So hopefully that helps as a end-to-end where you start with the submo as the building block to actually end up at being able to do a multi-year type scenario with Maxio and MCP and your AI agent of choice. So I will just finish up this series of.
All right. So that hopefully gave you a good snippet of how you can use Maxio MCP within Maxio, Claude Desktop, and then extending that into Excel with Claude. But I just wanted to call out, I also help manage our legal function at Maxio. So this is my buyer beware warning slide with regards to AI and Excel. AI is not a license to put your finance function on autopilot. Claude support, and this is a link to their website, and they're cautionary, but it tells you it's not recommended for delivering reports without human review. So I guess net, the human in the loop is super critical and a best practice. Definitely trust but verify anytime you're using Excel and AI as you're doing this. The nice part is with Maxio and Maxio MCP, it doesn't hallucinate as far as making up numbers. It's using cash report and data, so it ties exactly to the standards you expect with the ASC 606 type reporting and the calculations that are embedded within the Maxio platform. All right, so I'm going to switch gears to some other cool things you can do that are outside of a close and actually like a month-end process, but more to an ongoing weekly type exercise that Maxio can help support. The hardest part, at least for me, is looking in a SaaS environment as to how your cash flows are going to stream in and how do you get that source of data, especially when you have a large collection of contracts that renew all throughout the year and you've got seasonality type constraints. So let me kick this off.
Okay, in this video, I wanted to show the switch gears and go to cash forecasting, and then the ability of Maxio to assist. And probably one of the most difficult pieces of a 13-week cash forecast. It's knowing the timing of when your cash inflows are going to happen. Most SaaS businesses, the expense side is pretty predictable. Getting that same reliability is often a challenge on the inflow part. So looking at the Maxio subscription report, there's a projection builder, and here it'll give you in this demo instance, your customer name and transaction down to the transaction level start and end date. And then you can put probabilities in here as to, do you want a haircut of 90% type retention, or if you can do an uplift, you can say assume a 5% uplift on these renewals, and it'll schedule it out for you. But that really, outside of to build it, I've downloaded a AR aging, and then that's what you've already built. It's in flight for collection. But the critical part is what's coming up for renewal. And Maxio has all that great data of your existing contracts and what are scheduled for renewal, so you can act on that to ensure that you're billing and have that renewal inflow for that next wave of cash inflow. And then the third element would be if you're using Gong or your CRM to work with your go-to-market team, and then you could layer that piece on it. So for this video, we've got what Maxio is throwing out as the cash, basically renewals forecast. You've got your AR summary, aging, and then I've got a detail of hosting and other operating expenses that'll be coming out of the business. And then I use Claude to assist with creating a 16-week rolling forecast. And the cool thing was it looked at the aging buckets and came up with this and then weighted it. It has some offset type logic in here to when are you going to get the cash receipt from the time of the renewal. And then it detailed out your inflows from your aging buckets and then your outflows from what I provided as far as like a cash outflow. And then I asked it to give me a dashboard that would allow me to do a what if scenario. So I've got like an assumed $5 million balance for this company. And then where do we end up in week 16 based on this? So if you look at your renewal collection rate, let's say if I toggle that up and say, hey, I've got a 95%, it's dynamically updating the graph and the forecast. So here within the graph, you're seeing where your AR collections that are currently billed, how that is going to waterfall in. And then you've got your renewal billings and how that cash is coming in. And then you've got your outflows from that perspective. So say salary, I'm not going to be as aggressive in a hiring plan as the base case would say. So I can do a 20% or negative 20% adjustment, or say I'm going to get really bullish. Now I got a problem with my ending cash is dropping quicker. So just allowing you to leverage where is the business at. But again, it gets back to the building blocks of where is the source of truth to build these type of projections. That's where I love like this type of functionality within Maxio, that it can give you that base real contract data down to the granular level that you can assess each of the renewals and be able to weight that appropriately. But then with the add-in of AI, it allows you to get to these type of what if easy scenarios to say like in this instance, my renewal collection, if I said that was a 3-week, again, offset, that shows the negative effect to cash. Hopefully that helps. Again, there's ton of solutions out there, but this also gives you something that is probably what you already have licensed in Excel right now, and add in with Claude or other AI solution. And then Maxio as the source of truth for the baseline data allows you to get a pretty active and robust and tight cash forecast for the business.
All right.
Okay, in this video.
So I guess the next piece I want to do is, before we go to the next piece, Will.
Okay, in this video, I wanted to show
a couple poll questions to ask before we get to this white space analysis. So Will, do you want to launch? Okay. So is your company part of a private equity portfolio group? So we're seeing. 0 responses on that. All right, well, let's jump into the next video, which is probably my favorite part of how we're using Maxio data here, or potential how I could use Maxio data to help support the rest of my go-to-market team. And we'll start that off with this.
Hey, this video is a white space analysis I was playing around with in our demo instance. And this is probably the one that excites me probably the most. Monica mentioned in her session. But this is a challenge of like, how do you add value to the business and how do you support your go-to-market team? The base data that was used to create this was basically the contract information out of Maxio that I loaded into Claude Desktop, and basically with just a couple prompts saying, hey, I want to create a white space analysis that does an inventory of what are our customers currently licensed and saying, what could we sell that we're currently not selling? So in this demo instance, I've got roughly 5,400 customers, current ARR of almost 370 million. And it's showing that of these customers, 2.7 products per customer. So every SaaS company out there is trying to, how do you maximize retention and your basically NRR, which is your expansion ability, right? And like anything, the more cross-pollinated you are across your product offering, the stickier you become. So the goal is, how many products can you sell your customer that, assuming you got a multi-product type offering? And Maxio is a perfect example of that. We've got a host of different solutions that work well together, but usually a customer will start with one. So this analysis, a lot of companies do this in the CRM or whatnot, but your base data, which really, again, it's that source of truth, Maxio has every item that's been contracted between you and your customer. So what I was looking for was a tool that would allow us to leverage that data that we have in Maxio and allow you to, as a Maxio customer, to leverage and work with your teams. But this basically allows me to say an overview of what this demo company has by segment: strategic, SMB, startup. And then you've got a listing of like account managers. So if I like take Patrick Dempsey, it gives you a drill down then of what is our account manager responsible for, and then allows you to say, all right, if I just want to look at SMB, what do they have? And then how do I pivot to like, all right, I've got strategic customers. Here's the detail of this particular customer. And it drills down and gives you all of this great metadata related to that specific customer, which is like fantastic, given that all I did was like provided an existing contract listing out of Maxio and a product listing of a Maxio demo instance, and saying what is currently licensed and what could be licensed. And then the beauty of this is then you can say, from a sales priority size for my account management team, if I said, all right, this Audrey, what should you be focused on to help your account management team really prioritize their efforts and bringing value to that customer base? So this gives you a whole detail of strategic, and then Audrey could then go, all right, if I'm going to prioritize, Audrey doesn't have there. So it appears that I picked a bad customer or a bad account rep who just deals with strategic, which is not surprising. Typically, your strategic customers are larger and have a limited bandwidth to cover to be able to make sure you're addressing their specific needs. But the uber point is, just with 2 or 3 different source files out of Maxio, it gives you the ability to like leverage this type of fantastic data with an AI agent. And then also to empower your account management team or your go-to-market team, and like where they need to spend their time to be the biggest impact personally for their typically variable comp, but also for the company, to make sure that you're cross-threaded and driving this average product per customer to a larger number, which then hopefully is more value to the customer, and then which usually results in higher retention rate, which is a win-win for all interested parties. So hopefully this is a good demonstration of what's possible with the underlying data within Maxio and what you can do with the AI agent. Happy to go into more details with you and how you too can build something like this. Hey, this video is
All right. So hopefully that was helpul to see some use cases of how you can use Maxio and MCP if you're getting started, or how you can share against the user community. Because again, this is the first inning, so I'm super interested in learning how other individuals or companies are deploying AI. It seems to change every week with the new feature functionality that's coming out, but there's a ton of automation and workflows that can help companies grow faster and more efficiently, but just it's amazing getting that information at your fingertips. It does highlight though that AI is only as good as where it's sourcing and the hallucination is real. So interestingly, I was on LinkedIn seeing some posts and I saw this post from Christina Ross, who's the CEO at Cube, and it gave me a flashback to my time at Vista Equity when I was in their consulting group. And one of the first slides that they put up when a new company joined Vista Equity was just 3 words. It was data. And it hits home, and it's still true like many years later, that AI is just another tool. And so a tool, if you're trying to use information and data and how you capture it, the stronger the foundation is, the better the results are. Christina was highlighting the fact that a lot of people have tried AI and the output is wrong, and AI isn't the problem, your data is. And in a lot of ways, that's true. There is still connectivity and working through the technology, but having that clean set of data makes it so much easier to get meaningful type results. So I think in her concluding the observation that finance teams winning with AI right now aren't the ones with the fanciest tools. They're the ones who've built the foundation first. And I couldn't agree with that more. When you look at, you don't need to have all the tool sets there, but if you start with a clean foundation, you can get pretty fantastic results and really help support your team. All right, so the last part I just want to highlight, there was a couple questions, I guess, that came up in the previous sessions about governance, and that is near and dear. As a former auditor, I appreciate Maxio's focus on controls and data integrity. And so Maxio MCP is designed with that understanding that access must not compromise auditability. The control pillars and all of this are on the website, but it really gets into identity, audit logging, and data privacy and retention type considerations. So here, when we're looking at governance, the roles-based access, which I believe Chris touched upon in his session, it follows the user's profile. So that's one thing. If you're worried about who has access to what, when you authenticate with the MCP, is following the user's permission and what they're able to see. It also, with the data integrity, this is like I highlighted this, one of the strongest governance features is it's using the cache report logic. And when you're asking for current ARR, for example, it's going to pull that same if you were in Maxio itself running a report. So it is designed to not hallucinate, is pulling on those built defined type definitions and reporting logic that's within the platform. Audit logging and traceability. This is super key, like for any, as you're going to audit and who's updating and your platform and what you allow to your system of record to how it's being maintained. There's a couple roles within MCP when you do the configuration. One can be just a viewer, and then there are like capabilities of where you can allow it to actually do write commands. So that comes with, you want to know what's happening there. And so every skill Claude makes, it's logged with this AI connector service logs. So there's no fear of, is if you're using AI with the MCP connector, is it going to be making adjustments that you're not aware of or are not able to follow? And they're also specifically tagged as AI driven, so you can see true source of any type of edits and the updates. This is a recap of our control table. Again, this will be in the slide deck for you, but it just gives you a framework of how we use authentication, the audit trails, and the compliance right protection. So with that, I think we'll shift to any Q&A any of the attendees may have. Let's see. So I've seen a question from Daniel. How has Maxio shared the roadmap for how MCP will evolve? I think Chris Weber, he is working on that. Part of these sessions was to help drive like customer feedback and demand for that, but that will be shared in more detail here as we go along. But Chris and Mike, who heads up engineering, are really focused on how we're embedding AI within Maxio's platform to really harness the true power, and which will also address speed type concerns as well, but allowing you, depending on your role and function, to be able to get the most out of what AI, MCP, and Maxio have to offer. So we'll see if there's any other questions that come up. So let's see, Camilla, do you find that you are having to start from scratch every time with Claude if you end a session and a couple days later want to rerun a session with the different assumptions? No, I use Claude Desktop a lot and projects specifically. So that allows you to share information cross-functionally within your company or the invitee participant within that project that you've invited to do that, and it retains all the session data, which allows you to start and stop and come back. And then Luke, where can we enable the data masking? Luke, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure about that answer, but I can find out from Chris and Mike on how to enable that. Okay, so that looks like end of the Q&A, or at least what's in the queue. So lastly, I just want to leave before we end this session with some additional resources. We'll have links on the presentation to give you a product overview, how to configure MCP and Maxio. It takes literally like 2 minutes to get it up and running. And here's a link to, it'll provide sample prompts to get you going. And then lastly, a link to sign up for a demo to see Maxio and then see Maxio MCP and show you what's possible and also help you get a quick start if you're interested. So with that, thank you so much for attending. Really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you on the next session.